Okay, Dr. Stan here at Radio Liberty, coming to you from the hills overlooking beautiful and picturesque Monterey Bay. Now, if you're out there across America and you'd like to give us a call, our telephone number, 1-888-24-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-24-LIBERTY. And here on the Central Coast, 464-8295. So give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have a question or comment on what you're hearing tonight. Now, we certainly were talking with Antony Sutton, who for many years was a research fellow at Hoover Institute. But of course, contrary to what most people believe, Hoover Institute being the great bastion of anti-communism, when Professor Sutton began to write about how we had financed communism since its inception, he came under tremendous pressure and eventually was forced out of Hoover Institute because there's certain things that scholars are not supposed to investigate. And of course, most of that is the fact that since the inception of communism, it has been funded by great American banks and great American corporations. And so we've been talking about, first of all, his trilogy of books, Western Technology and Soviet Economic Development, which is the classic analysis, documentation of the fact that since the very inception of communism, it was funded by the West. And then, of course, we get into the three books, the so-called Wall Street trilogy, Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler, and then, of course, Wall Street and FDR. And I think, of course, one of the most shocking parts of this whole trilogy is the fact that we actually funded Adolf Hitler. I think that when you begin to realize the funding that came to Hitler to allow him to build up his war machine, to finance his expansion of his power over the German people, this is the part that I think is most shocking to the average American. Who were the people who were funding and financing Adolf Hitler?
Well, the funding from the United States went through Union Banking Corporation in New York and to a Dutch bank. That was to disguise the flow of funds. And from the Dutch bank, it went to the Schroeder Bank in Germany to an account run by Rudolf Hess, I think. Now, the Union Banking Corporation in New York, very interesting. I think it had 8 directors, 4 of which were Dutch Nazis, and the other 4 were members of Skull and Bones, the Yale secret society. And that included Harriman and Prescott Bush, the grandfather of the President Bush. And that was the main funnel for U.S. funds. Of course, there were other things. Hitler was assisted with technology. There's no question about that. For example, Standard Oil sold the hydrogenation patents to make oil from coal in about 1927, I think. And there's no way Germany could have gone to war in 1939 without this synthetic oil, because Germany just has no oil deposits.
And of course, the formula for making ethyl high octane gasoline came from Standard Oil as
Eagle Corporation,
right.
Yes.
And then, of course, the thing that all during the war, why we had the American plants, General Motors, General Electric, IT&T, Ford Motor Company, they were all producing the war materials for Adolf Hitler.
Yes, definitely, yes. Not only that, but there was something quite interesting. In 1944, the Chase Bank was still operating in Nazi-occupied France in 1944, and it was actively soliciting Nazi accounts. So here you've got Chase Bank operates in the United States, which is at war with Germany, and you've got Chase Bank in Paris is trying to get accounts from the Nazis.
And then, of course, where does I.G. Farben fit into this whole incredible
I.G.
story?
Farben is interesting, too, because a number of the directors were American. And I.G. Farben was a big backer financially of Hitler. And this is absolutely confirmed because in the Hoover Institution I found the bank transfer slips from the Schroeder Bank.
Right, and so many of the directors of I.G. Farben were actually Americans.
Oh, yeah, they were Americans. I forget their names offhand, but very definitely. And there was a thing called Himmler's Circle. These were people, who wanted access to Himmler, and so they became part of the circle, and they gave money to Himmler, and there are quite a number of Americans involved in that.
Oh, that's incredible. Let's go to Tony in SoCal. Hi, Tony.
Yeah, good evening. Hi. It's really great to hear Antony Sutton. It's really something. The question I had to do with what you were talking about before the last caller about Adolf Hitler,
Mm-hmm.
and I was wondering what Professor Sutton had to say about the early financing of Hitler and General Electric, and how the Roosevelt family fit into this.
All right. The question was the early financing of Adolf Hitler, General Electric, and the Roosevelt family.
And, there's a lot of different. There was financing through General Electric, through Osram, through IG Farben America, and the Standard Oil. That's the financing aspect. But there's another interesting aspect. There was a cousin of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Punzi Hamstegel, who was one of the inner circle of the Nazis. He was at one time a U.S. military attaché in Berlin, I think, and then he joined the Nazis and actually was right on the inner circle advising Hitler. And he was a cousin of Roosevelt. Now, about 1944, I think he got out of Germany. He went to Canada, and I think Roosevelt got him down to the United States.
Okay.
So you've actually got a Roosevelt family member on the inner circle of the early Hitler movement.
Of course, we find this strong relationship between General Electric, Standard Oil of New Jersey, the General Motors, Ford Motor Company. All of them seem to be right in bed with the Nazis from the very inception, weren't they?
Yes. But quietly, not too obviously. And at the same time, they were building up the Soviet Union.
And of course, it was sort of this old analogy, the best enemy that money can buy.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we see the same thing going on with China today, and nobody can understand why we keep giving most favored nation treaty status to the Chinese communists, the wicked Chinese communists, and why we keep pouring money into the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank and Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers and General Motors. We just can't understand why the same people are doing the same thing in communist China that they did in Stalin's Russia, Lenin's Russia, in Hitler's Germany.
That's interesting. Is it that they don't know?
Well, they really
they don't care.
No, I think that they really don't know. I think that there isn't a tremendous apathy out there. But, of course, what we try to do with our programs is to educate people and help them to learn these things and say, look, if you don't believe us, why, you can certainly check out the writings. Now, you mentioned that Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution is now being printed by somebody in the East.
It's out. It's been reprinted. I made an agreement in January of this year. In a library edition, it's very expensive. It's $36, and it's being put out by Buccaneer Books in New York. I'd like to get a cheaper edition out. This is, it was only a small edition, I think 750 copies of each volume, but at least it is available.
All right, fine. So that these are available.